Written 10 years after Married Alive, Leather Wings by Marilyn Duckworth is a very different kind of story. Wallace, the Rawleys man, comes into the lives of Esther and her young granddaughter. Prepare to be entertained and challenged.
Wallace. I saw the girl leave, the babysitter, a schoolgirl, not my type. I was sitting in the car on the corner of the road, backed up slightly in a driveway where I happen to know the inhabitants are away on holiday in Queenstown. I know a lot about the people round here, more than you might think. People talk about each other, and they talk to me, the Rawleys man. Or else they're rude to me and send me packing. Either way, I learn things. I'd make a good burglar with my inside knowledge, except I have a healthy respect for the law, and thieving isn't one of my vices. How did I happen to be there to watch the babysitter leave? I wasn't actually spying. I didn't even know they were going out, the grandparents. It's just that I've taken to cruising around these streets at night with the radio on FM. It's a kind of company. It's my territory. It belongs to me, these streets. The flat's so boring in the evenings. I can't keep my mind on the telly. I need to keep moving. I jig my knees in time to the music and lift my hands on and off the wheel. I've been parking here in this driveway where I can see the bedroom windows of their house. I don't know which one belongs to who, but I can guess. The big window must be theirs, which leaves two smaller windows to choose from for Jania. I like to think of her in a big bed, cuddling that shiny cushion she carries about with her. I bet she doesn't get a story at bedtime. The grandmother looks too full of herself for stories, and he's a sour old bugger. I'd read her a story if it was me. I'm good at stories, I've told a few. No one sat on my bed and read to me when I was a kid, like you see it on TV. I'd have liked that. I watch the kids' programs sometimes. I can do that, not being stuck in a 9-to-5 job. I liked the hymns we used to sing in Sunday school. All things bright and beautiful. Jesus bids us shine. For a wicked kid, I sang an awful lot of good boy hymns. There's something about a hymn. Like a little candle burning in the night. She had glasses, the babysitter. They flashed at me in the streetlight as they drove past. She and the woman, Esther. She'd be taking her home. That left him alone in the house with the kid. I'm surprised she trusts him, the things you hear these days about sinning fathers. She'll be at school during the day, little Jania. I know the school. I walk by that way sometimes. At lunchtime it's really noisy, with all these kids yelling and running around. Then the bell goes and the whole playground empties like a bath plug pulled out, all draining away inside the big doors. I don't hang around. It isn't wise. You hear about these men who hang around school gates. There's other places. I use my imagination. Sometimes I wish there was someone else I could talk to, like this mate of mine at school. He'd be good to talk to. He's probably in prison. No, that's a joke. He'll be around somewhere, disguised as a grown-up, somebody's father. Who knows? He'd know what I was talking about. He knows Claude. The wickedness. It isn't real wickedness unless you take it too far, and I never do that. It doesn't matter what you do in your head, unless you're a Catholic, and then you go to confession. I remember her dressing up to go to confession, putting on her gloves. Gloves! She was the only person I knew wore gloves. Probably still wears gloves, truth be known. I suppose she thought that made her good. Church. But I don't think so. Why did she have to go to confession if she was good? I knew she wasn't good. I'd heard her. He didn't go to church. He didn't need religion. He was a wizard, a genius. I think they sent me to Sunday school to have the house empty. He needed silence to work, to have his ideas. There were times when he went through my school case and sneered because they weren't the right books or my ballpoint had leaked. But most of the time he didn't care, didn't bother. He told the man next door I was in Standard 3 when I'd moved up months before. He couldn't keep me straight in his head. Not a wizard at everything, right? Right. I don't like to think of Jania and wickedness at the same time. It isn't right, not for someone like her. I don't want to think about that. Have I described her? It's like her skin has water running underneath it. It's so clear, so thin it could tear. Those freckles look like lace across her nose, and they crinkle up when she worries. She has this worry frown, comes and goes, on and off, as if she knows something's crook with the world, and she's not wrong there. That little scar on her neck, it's like another frown on her skin, not ugly, but sad-looking. You want to run your finger in it. Her hair's very fine. It's candy floss, and her little arms and legs are like china, so white and breakable. Handle with care, written all over her. I don't know if her grandparents care enough, if they understand what she is, how breakable. I understand, and it makes me shiver. It frightens me. It really does. Esther has been falling behind at work. Since she has cut down her hours, she finds she has to work harder. Theoretically, it shouldn't be this way, but since staff are being put off rather than taken on, she is left with more or less the same workload. The paperwork diverted to another desk eventually ends up back on her own, and she might as well have done it herself in the first place. She can't fall behind, and she can't complain. She needs this job, or where would she and Rex be? The mortgage didn't arrest conveniently when he had his heart attack. It is still there, thumping away as regularly as ever in their joint account. Lately she has taken to bringing work home with her. She shouldn't. Confidential papers must not leave the building. But what else can she do? Donald knows she does this, so it isn't a secret she has to carry all alone. He warns her about letting the stuff out of her hands. He would be in trouble himself, if trouble arose. Don't let that child get into it, whatever you do. As if she would. She keeps the papers in 2 box files in the sideboard cupboard, along with her Mills and Boon manuscript. Bringing office papers home is not her only transgression. At work, she finds paragraphs of her romance, typing themselves onto her computer, and prints these out guiltily before erasing them. She would hate her lover to read her love story. He drew her softly against him so that she could feel the sinewy tautness of his body burning through her silk gown. She was helpless, powerless in his arms, and yet she felt vibrant, deliciously alive. Donald might think it was another joke. It isn't a joke. At home, she works in the front room with the door shut. I don't know why you bother coming home to be with Jania if you shut yourself up in here, Rex grumbles. Not every day, just while I'm catching up. I wouldn't mind a cup of tea. The room is dark in the afternoon, not a pleasant place for working. An outsider might think she has a nice life, a solid job, a husband who does the dishes, and a lover besides. She has a pretty grandchild whose father trusts Esther to care for her. Riches. Who could want more? So why is she here in this glum room, immersed in figures that argue with each other inexplicably, terrified of fouling things up and losing her job, of fouling things up and losing Donald, of incurring Rex's wrath and worse, his misery? She can't stand his misery. His hand on her shoulder sometimes feels like a wet rag, a wet sponge, the sponge he has thrown in. He doesn't care if the world ends. And Jania, why can't she feel for Jania what she felt for Prue? She can only think of her grandchild as an interruption, a series of interruptions. The wavelength between them is wrong. She can't tune in to this curious child who talks, but doesn't really talk to her, who stares at her as if she is a thing from outer space, not a grandmother at all. Which is she, anyway? Grandmother? Romantic heroine? Wife? Thing from outer space? She catches sight of an entry on the paper in her hand. Yes, why had she missed that? This explains, thank God. She settles to her work with a gasp of relief. There is a chance she can sort out this mess of figures. The door opens. Jania hangs there, holding on to the handle, staring and silent. It would be easier if she spoke. What is it? We've got 2 TVs back home. And? Grandad's watching the wrong program. Oh dear. Well, it is his TV set. I don't suppose he'll be long. Why don't you go and play with your houses? I've done that. It's night time and they're all asleep. She twiddles the door handle. I need some cars and things for my street. I've only got a motorbike. That's nice. Esther has lost her place. She follows her finger down, then riffles through papers, looks up. What? I'll come and see later, okay? When Jania doesn't move, she lays down the computer printout in her hand and says, Don't you have any friends at school you'd like to bring home to play with your village? It's a city. Well, do you? Shrug. I like Mrs. Flett. She's nice to me. You can't bring your teacher home to play. How about that Trish? No, thank you. Well, off you go now while I finish this, all right? When she does go, the little girl leaves the door ajar. Esther gets up and closes it, quietly, because she feels a measure of guilt. There is a battery clock with a loud tick above the mantelpiece. It had lived once in the bedroom until Rex complained it argued with his heartbeat. He couldn't help trying to slow his pulse to match it, and failing. Now the clock has turned its attention on Esther. Time to throw it out. She turns back to the problem files and minutes later has forgotten Jania and guilt. Jania goes out the side door slowly, leaving this open as well, and sits on the path just inside the iron gate, leaning her ear on the stained red cushion and putting her thumb in her mouth. The Rawleys man is coming from the house next door. He swings his basket and shows his wonky teeth in a smile. Jania hesitates. Then she remembers the sparrow and gets to her feet. I know who you are. You're Mr. Rawley. That's right. Well, I'm not. I'm Wallace. Actually, you can call me Wallace. Are you coming in? Something ungracious in the invitation nearly stops him, perhaps, because he looks reluctant for a moment. Jania says, You've got my grandma's ointment, haven't you? And her plant food, yes. He appears to make up his mind. One hand swings the gate, the other is occupied with his basket. She's busy just now. Well, she's busy for me. I don't expect she's busy for you. Rex is busy too. He's getting our dinner. Grandad! Wallace steps on the threshold of the front door, waiting for Rex, who doesn't appear at once. Never mind. You give these to Mummy, Grandma. All right? They're paid for. I've still got that ball. It's a bomb now, but I haven't dropped it yet. On my city. You can come and see my city if my grandma says it's all right. She won't mind. Wallace's face distorts in an expression of puzzlement and wonder. Rex has heard voices and pokes an inquiring face out from the kitchen doorway. Jania? Wallace ducks his bristly head behind his basket and waves a hand at the parcel of goods clutched now to the little girl's chest. Afternoon, Mr. Just delivering the rest of your wife's order, if you'd like to check it. Oh, thanks. Well, I want to show Wallace my doll city. Can I? No, I don't think so, Jania. Oh, but Esther said I should go and play. Go and play, then. Mr. Wallace has his job to do. Wallace looks apologetic. He looks, in fact, embarrassed, and suddenly very tired. Perhaps another time. I have to get home to my tea. They'll be wondering where I... Esther arrives in the passageway, her thick hair rumpled as if she has just woken from a deep sleep. She has a habit of combing it through with her fingers while she works, massaging the brain, she has explained to Donald when he commented on this. Oh, my stuff. Thanks. Did you think of anything more you need? What? Oh, no thanks. Are you all right? You look... Wallace straightens his back. Been a long day. I was just saying I have to get home to my tea. My tea'll be waiting. He trips against the raised doorstep and nearly falls on his way out. They laugh about him when he is gone. He is turning into a clown. Jania is in bed when they talk about him again. Rex tells Esther how Jania had invited the man to see her doll's city. What did you say to that? I said no, of course. It's in her bedroom. What sort of man would invite himself into a little girl's bedroom? I thought she invited him. Did he know where this toy town was? Maybe not. It just shows you, though, how much she took in of your little lecture. Last week you thought he was interested in me. What makes you so suspicious of people? I'm sure the poor bloke's harmless. I don't want Jania growing up suspicious. We just have to look out for her. That's our job. Whose job? You weren't looking out when he came. I was working. I do have to earn a living. Yes. Rex gives her a look something like hate. She remembers being told a bad heart makes a man unreasonable, and tries to warm herself on this bleak piece of information.